I don't know how much time I got on here left. I have a bunch of videos on here that I got to take off. Today's it's kind of an awakening day. Excuse me. It's been rough. I'm not gonna lie, I was excited about getting this job. But the more and more I spend time here, I realize it's not what I want. I live too far away from my kids. I rarely ever get to see my son. And my daughter wants to go back to public school, which means I won't be able to see her nearly as much. We won't be able to go and do the things that I want to do with her. And it was really hard. Because this morning, while I was getting ready, I walked by and I looked at her bed. And I got this overwhelming sense of anxiety and panic. Because all I could think is that she's going to leave me. Such an odd thought. But it's true, to a degree. Because eventually, in the next few years, there's going to be less and less time for Daddy. More and more time for friends and work. It's what I'm going through with her brother. I've had a long road to get to where I am in life. A long road. My father was a drug dealer and a drug addict, and at times an alcoholic. Who used to beat my mother almost on a daily basis. And he definitely was not against laying hands on his kids. I grew up in a house of screaming and yelling and fighting. One of my distinct memories is, we lived in a trailer. And it had the vents in the floor for heat. And I used to lay on that floor with my blanket over the heater, hiding behind the door. Just waiting for my father to come home. As he'd drive by back and forth by the trailer. We lived on a dead-end road, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And there were some nights where he was home, but I would still lay on that floor wide awake. And a few times listening to people try to break into the house, and my dad running out and firing in his underwear, firing shots off as the car peeled off down the road. My dad having us hand out baggies of weed to people that would come, and they all had the prices on them, and we'd collect the money and hand out the baggies. Him sitting in the kitchen trimming his plants and microwaving the leaves and putting them into brown paper bags, or his closet lined with reflective paper and heat lamps while he's growing the plants in his closet. But I remember the fighting and yelling the most. My dad breaking things and hitting my mother. I laid there on the floor, scared and afraid, as any kid should be. But it still kind of takes a toll on you. In the summer of '95, my parents got divorced. Actually, they got into, I remember, a pretty sizable fight. My dad grabbed my brother and pinned him against the wall. Had him by the throat, was strangling him. And my mom, pretty sure if I remember correctly, hit him with a vacuum cleaner hose and just kind of gave him a little what for, and before my dad could get up, she took off and ran into the woods and hid. And my dad took off after. I remember the next day, I don't even know where my dad was. The phone rang. It's my mother. She said, just pack what you can, I'm coming to get you. And so us kids packed our stuff, what little we could. They came, we hopped in the vehicle and took off. We stayed at my grandparents' house. And then we took off for New Hampshire and stayed with my aunt and uncle. And then my mother got an apartment. And my brother tried to go to school, tried to go to college. He was a little older, but he ultimately ended up going back to Maine. My two sisters, who were older than me as well, went to high school. The oldest sister, she got into some things. My other sister, just turned out all right. And I was a freshman. I started a new school as a freshman. And I remember it was the kids that everybody thought were troubled kids. They're the first ones that took me in. They never judged me. They just took me in and accepted me for who I was. I was no longer the son of a drug addict and a drug dealer. I no longer got picked on and beat up and pushed around. By the kids who knew who my father was. I no longer had teachers that set expectations for me because of who my father was, because of how my home life was. We were poor. We got all of our clothes from the local church. I wore clothes with holes in them before holes were cool. Skechers sneakers when they were the cheapest sneakers you could buy. High Sierra, I think, was the other one. But it was a whole new world for me. thought I was pretty happy and content just doing my thing. I guess I was for the most part. I was young and ignorant and oblivious to what was going on. And then there was my first heartbreak. I think I was 18 years old, and I was seeing this girl, and I had my driver's license, and she kept bugging me to bring her to school. And of course, she lived right by where I worked, and so I would bring her to school. And I was working 2 jobs. I was going to college. And then she told me that her parents didn't want me bringing her to school anymore, so she asked me if I'd wait at the bus stop with her. She was still in school. I was not. I was in college. And so I'd wait with her at the bus stop. And I remember her saying all the time she wanted me to hang out with her friends. And, I just kept telling her, well, no, you need to spend some time with your friends. If you want to take my car, take my car. One of your friends, if they have a license, but they don't have transportation, you can use my car. It's not a big deal. And she's like, no, I want you to hang out with me and my friends and spend some time with us. And okay, whatever, And then I remember one day she was getting on the bus. She says, well, I have a dance tonight, so I probably won't call you. Why don't you call me tomorrow? I said, okay. So I called, and no answer. And, I'm just a young kid full of insecurities. So I called the next day, and her father answers. And it was not so nice, and said she doesn't want to talk to you anymore. So I'm like, okay, what the hell did I do? I'm heartbroken, I'm devastated. And she was friends with the people I worked for. And so I went into work that Monday, and all the stuff that I had given her or she had taken from me was sitting in a brown paper bag at work. It was kind of at that point I knew everything was over. But then it slowly came out that she was telling people that I wouldn't let her ride the bus to school, that I wouldn't let her wait at the bus stop, that I wouldn't let her hang out with her friends by herself. So all the things that she wanted, she was telling the exact opposite to everybody to make it look like I was possessive and controlling. Which devastated me. I was 18 years old, I cared about this girl. It was the first girl I ever really cared about. And this is what happened. It was devastating to me, and I ended up losing my job because they believed what she was saying. And at that time, my whole world came crashing down. But I moved on. I ended up meeting another girl, which was wrong on my part. She was married. We ended up hanging out. We were having an affair. We were together for like 4 years, and she kept bugging me to propose. And I knew I didn't want to. I knew it wasn't right, but my father had died. Inconclusive cause of death. A lot of questions about it, and maybe sometime I'll go over the details, because it's a hell of a story. And I remember going to Maine. That's where he lived, to his funeral. And as I was driving, I blacked out for a very brief moment in time. It was just very brief. And when I came to, my head was cocked off to the side, my tongue was hanging out of my mouth, and my life instantly changed from that point on. I was 22 years old. And I just got PTSD. I'm not sure why or how, but after that I started having panic attacks and anxiety. And I attached myself to this girl when I knew it wasn't right, but I was struggling. So I proposed. My whole world was about this girl. then one day I caught her in the closet with another guy. And again, my whole world got tossed upside down. I started moving around with my job. You know, I had a good job. I love what I did. I was still young and naive. And I ultimately ended up in Massachusetts. And I started hanging out with a girl I went to high school with. And she had a kid. He was 14 months old. And I ended up falling in love with this kid. And the girl I went to high school with. Hindsight being what it is, you know, me relying way too much on getting connected to other people. When we first started kind of hanging out, she would leave me at the house to go pick up her ex-boyfriend because he was too drunk or needed a ride. And she asked me why I wouldn't ask her out or why we weren't dating. And I says, well, you know, you're kind of spending a lot of time with your ex-boyfriend. It's just not conducive to a relationship. Should have been sign number one. And so she kind of broke it off with her ex-boyfriend where she wasn't doing that anymore, and started hanging out more and more. And I ended up proposing to her after a year. And she said that I needed to commit to a family if we were going to get married, which means no more traveling with work, because I was traveling all over New England. And that I needed to be home every night to tuck my kids into bed, or tuck our kids into bed. So I went and talked to the owner of the company I was working for, because at that point I had done a lot for that company. And I went out and had lunch, had a handshake agreement that I would create new standard operating procedures for the sales offices, for the telemarketing offices, and that I would come up with a whole new training manuals for sales and customer service for the front desk staffs at the 7 resorts that they had. And then I would go around and train them, and by that time he would open up a marketing office in either Berlin or Littleton, New Hampshire, which was close to where my family lived. Handshake agreement. Well, when I finished doing what I promised to do, the brother of the owner came to me and says, you know what? I really appreciate everything you've done. You're demoted back to a regular sales rep. So after all of that, and having a handshake agreement and doing everything I did for that company, I was asked out. So I left. I got a job working as the general manager of a Best Western in Franconia, New Hampshire. And we're planning our wedding and working out all the details. I'm putting in extra hours and extra time, and I'm not getting paid every week on a regular basis. So something's not right. So I keep talking to the owner, like, hey, you know, am I going to get paid? Blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. And after a couple of months of getting paid sometimes and not other times, he told me my services were no longer required. And so I asked him if I was going to get the last of my pay. And he said he owed me nothing. So I went to the Better Business Bureau. The Better Business Bureau went after him. Well, come to find out, he changed some numbers on my paperwork, so it looked like I was only making $300 a week to be a general manager of the Best Western. I got a check for $1,200, which was far off of what I was supposed to get. And I just kept going. And about 5 or 6 years into our marriage, I find out that my ex-wife is sending hundreds of text messages and exchanging multiple phone calls a day to my sister's husband, which I'm pretty devastated by this. And I'm upset. Now, I'm not a yeller, screamer, fighter, and I've never told my ex-wife no. Whatever she wanted to do, just do. If you wanted to go somewhere, go somewhere. If you wanted to do something, do it. Like, if you want to buy something, buy something. Like, I've just never been that kind of person. And, you know, I was upset, and I yelled. And she looked at me and said, don't you yell at me. And me, being the weak human being that I am, apologized. And instead of walking away, I stayed. And things were great for years. And then we finally found a farm. Now we had a horse farm together. We started a horse farm together. I picked stalls and I did everything, and we were homeschooling the kids. And we were living up in Island Pond, Vermont, which was way too cold. So we decided to move, and we found a place in Campton, New Hampshire. 52-acre little farm with a river running through it. Off the beaten path, very quiet. Had a huge indoor arena, barn, everything attached, all one building. After 3 years of building it up, or actually 2.5 years of building it up, my ex-wife started to become really nasty towards myself and our kids. And right around Christmas time, well, actually it was Christmas Day, I was at my mother's house, and she's kind of talking, and I leaned against the counter next to her, and she visibly slid away from me. And that triggered something in my head. That something wasn't right. And so on the ride home, she's quiet. And she kept looking out the window, and then she'd look back at the kids, but she wouldn't look at me. So 2 days after Christmas, I finally was like, what is going on? And she looked at me and said, I can't do this anymore. She told me that I deserved nothing, but none of it was mine. It was all hers. And she wanted a divorce. At that point, I had been home, tucking my kids into bed for almost 13 years, every night. I did everything in my power to give her everything she wanted. Never really thought about me. And she looked at me and said she wanted somebody to put her first. Now, I gave up. It's tough to say it that way because it was my choice. I did it by my choice. Because I wanted to be a husband and a father. And so I picked stalls, I did work around the farm because the horse farm was what she wanted. That was her dream. So every day of my life, while we were together, was trying to build something for her. And she looked at me and said that she wanted somebody that put her first. Meaning somebody that put her before her kids, before everything. And I was just absolutely floored. I mean, she was having an affair, is ultimately what happened. And it was so easy. To slide somebody else into my slot. And here I am, just dust in the wind. Everything I worked for, gone. Taken from me. I had no credit history because I never put anything in my name the entire time we were together, which is worse than bad credit, just so you know. I had nowhere to live. I had no source of income. I had no vehicle. And this was all as the pandemic was starting. Let's say I had some dark moments. I still have dark moments. I'm still fighting and struggling every day. And like I said, seeing my daughter's bed this morning and the feeling that she was going to leave me, that hit hard. That hit really hard. I have never in my life taken time to do anything for myself. And if you do that, I've learned the hard way that you have nothing. If you build your life around other people can take your life. Somebody else can slot right in your spot, and you got to watch them live the life that you built from the outside. I just kind of wanted to tell this story. And it's a very abbreviated version. I know we're like almost 30 minutes in, but it is a very abbreviated version of my life. Point is that I'm tired of living everybody else's dream. I work now Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday mornings, with Wednesdays and Thursdays off. Sometimes I work from home. And I was excited when I got this job. But now with my daughter wanting to go back to school, like I said, I won't have that time. I've been through a lot in my life. But I've been through it for a reason. I can give up and just say, fuck it. Or I can design the life that I want. I'm sick and tired of living everybody else's life. I want my life. I want to live my way. I want to make my own schedule. I want to do whatever the frick I want to do with my kids, when I want to do it, because I don't have much time left before they're too old to spend much time with me. I'm sure we'll still do things together, but they're adults, not kids anymore. So I'm hoping today was that kick that I needed to get my life in gear. Because time's not stopping for me. Time has no sympathy for me. Life has no sympathy for me. I can't have sympathy for myself. I gotta move. Keep on moving. Create dreams and goals and go after them. So I can have these precious years with my kids, and I can build the life that I want to live for myself and them. We all have shit we go through in life. And the escape exit sometimes looks really good. Sometimes it seems like the only option. But it's not. We gotta make it better. We're gonna push through and try to make it to the other side. I just wanted to get this out. Just keep on moving. Don't ever stop. Don't ever give up. Don't ever give in.